And hello, everyone, and welcome to our Brazil and Atlantic Canada How to Ship to and from Brazil Meet the Movers. This is organized by the Brazil Canada Chamber of Commerce, the BCCC, through the BCCC Atlantic chapter, which has co-chairs Peter Shaw and Bernadette Fernandes. I am Peter Hawkins. I'm co-chair of the Brazil Canada Chamber of Commerce, BCCC, and SVP and Managing Director at MELLOHAWK Logistics. The BCCC is a coast-to-coast, independent, nonprofit Canadian organization that has promoted business relations between Canada and Brazil for over 50 years by creating and maintaining high-level networking in our sectoral committees, events, because at BCCC, we connect. I want to thank our annual sponsors, Valley, MELLOHAWK Logistics, Proactiva Results, BMA Law, and Brookfield, all of our members and partners for their continued support. I also want to thank Pablo Sepulveda, Director, Latin American Trade at Zim Integrated Shipping Services. Zim is the sponsor of our webinar today, and you will hear more from him in a moment. As we always do, and which I love to do, is that we have a land acknowledgement. And although we have people who are in Portugal, two in Brazil, one in Mississauga, and of course, Peter in Port St. John, I'm going to do the one for the city of St. John. By the way, the city of St. John has a great site that talks about their method of coming to what their land acknowledgement was. It was fascinating to read. Everybody who has an interest in truth and reconciliation should have a look at that. So the City of St. John's land acknowledgement is the City of St. John, Menegasque, is situated on the traditional territory of the Wolastoqiyik Maliseet, along with the indigenous neighbors, the Micmac, Mi'kmaq, Passamaquoddy, and Pesco Tumakati, signed peace and friendship treaties with the British Crown in the 1700s that protected their rights to land and resources. We are privileged to work and live on this land. Now, as BCCC, we also have a diversity, equity, and inclusion statement that we like to give. And so that statement is, together we stand as leaders, embracing diversity, equity, and inclusion. We recognize that DEI is not just the right thing to do, but essential for our organization's success. We lead the charge, understanding that diversity and inclusion practices must permeate all aspects of our business. It is not a standalone initiative, nor confined to HR policies alone. By weaving DEI into the fabric of our organization, we cultivate an environment where every individual thrives, innovation flourishes, and collective potential is realized. With unwavering commitment, we engage with our employees and staff, members, and contributors to foster real and sustainable change. Let us forge ahead, united in our mission to create a diverse and inclusive future that transcends boundaries and elevates us all. And with that, what I would love to do, and I'm just waiting to see if, yes, he is. So we have Craig Estabrooks, and I'm delighted. Craig is the president of Port St. John, and he is actually, I had a conversation with, I think his last name was McGuire. Does that ring a bell? Who was on the committee? Yes. So he was talking about the people who work in St. John for St. John. And he said when the hiring committee was looking to find a guy, there was nobody that stood higher than this local dynamic leader. And so I've only met Craig a few times. He took forever to accept me on LinkedIn, but I do think you've got a dynamite guy here, and I would love to hear an opening welcome from Craig Estabrooks. Craig, please, over to you.
Well, thank you so much for that introduction and allowing me to be part of this today. I know my colleague Peter knows many folks on the call and is going to be a big part of this. But, you know, growth and trade is so important to the port. And I've been 3 years in this role, 13 years at the port. And when I met with our board of directors to apply for this job, I painted a vision of what we could be. With the right infrastructure that we were putting in place through our modernization that's now complete. What further enhancements we needed to that infrastructure. What a port can be when everyone is aligned and you have the right partners. So I just want to talk a little bit about this before we get in there, because we're really, really proud of what we've accomplished at the Port of St. John. So over the last decade, a Port Authority and two levels of government, the province of New Brunswick and the government of Canada, we put $250 million into the infrastructure. So we've revitalized the west side of our port, and we're returning it to the greatness that we saw for over a century between 1850 and post-World War II. we're returning that port to that great century of activity that has occurred historically. But it's about the partners too. So one pillar is the infrastructure. We've got that in place. We've got two berths. We've got deeper water. We've got the infrastructure now with our intermodal facility and our modern truck gate. But the partners are what are really going to take us to the next level. So from an operating standpoint, we have DP World here. We're their only East Coast terminal in North America. We're very, very proud since 2017. They've brought in a lot of equipment, well over $100 million worth of equipment to totally revitalize the yard. We started with 2 new cranes, 50 gauge cranes in January of 2017. We had 2 massive new cranes when our infrastructure modernization project was complete. And now we're going to welcome cranes 5 and 6 this month here. So for us to go from equipment and cranes that was really put in place in the 1970s and hadn't been upgraded for decades to 6 new cranes in the last number of years is a remarkable development for us. And then, of course, the partners in rail and in the shipping lines as well. So, it wasn't that long ago that we had one global shipping line MSC. We now have 3 with Maersk joining Hapag-Lloyd's Gemini Cooperation in early next year. So we have 5 weekly services today. We've taken a huge leap. 3 years ago, we did about 80 to 85,000 TEUs. We're now in the 150 to 200,000 range. We'll be very close to that 200,000 number here this year, with in excess of 200,000 TEUs projected into next. And it's because of the activity and the shipping lines that have welcomed St. John. I see there's someone from Zim, I believe, on the call today. We would love to welcome Zim into the complement. We are open for business at the Port of St. John. We've got capacity, and we want to see lots of new partners emerge with the longer standing partners of, again, Hapag-Lloyd, MSC, CMA, and then welcoming Maersk in early next year. And I'll end on this note. Because in the Canadian context, I think everyone should be aware rail is key. The Class 1 rail networks in Canada are absolutely crucial. If many of you are more familiar with the European context, passengers dominate the rail service in Europe. Cargo would be secondary in North America, but specifically Canada. Cargo rules the railway, and the rails are very, very important pieces. So our big value proposition at the Port of St. John, yes, it's the infrastructure, it's the partners, but it's the connectivity into 3 Class 1 railways. So through our short line, MB Southern, who's a top of the line short line, recognized all across Canada as being one of the best, we connect into CSX, we connect into CN, and most importantly for the growth we've experienced the last number of years, CPKC. We're part of their unrivaled North American rail network. If you look at their beautiful map, you see Vancouver, you see ports in Mexico, and you see St. John as their East Coast gateway. And they've really helped us grow that capacity and have taken a big leap. They're 270 miles closer to inland, and we really see it as a very important white glove service that they offer the rail line, the container partners in St. John. So we got a lot of energy here. We go above and beyond. We're the port that's growing. We're part of a comeback story. And Peter and his colleagues, Shannon and Marissa, we have a dedicated team that work with cargo owners, freight forwarders, you name it. We go out there and we do all the work we need because we can't sit back and rest and just assume that all this growth is going to happen. We need to fight for every bit of it. And being partners with groups like yours is a key to that story. So thank you for allowing me to tell a little bit about St. John, introduce myself, and welcome your great panel.
Thank you so much, Craig. And it's I've been down to St. John 6 times now in the last 2 years, bringing delegates from Brazil to see the great opportunities there. But of course, it is a gateway for all of Atlantic Canada. And so we want to talk a little bit about Halifax too, and about what's happening through Zim. So Pablo Sepulveda, and I keep struggling over your name. I'm so sorry. Sepulveda. There we go. The Director of Latin American Trade at Zim is going to give us a presentation now and talk about Zim and of course the logistics behind the Brazil-Canada bilateral trade. And so over to you. I believe you have a presentation to share. Thanks so much, Craig.
Thank you very much, Peter. I will share my screen with the same presentation. Let me know if you can see it now. As you may know, ZIM is a global shipping company. We move more than 3 million TEUs a year. And the last, I would say, 5 years, we have been growing quite a bit in Latin America. This is the area that I represent, right? I'm the trade director and oversee the business from the trade perspective from Canada and the US to Latam. when I joined SIM about 6 years ago, we were operating 5 ships in Latin America. Nowadays, we do more than 30 vessels. So we have enlarged our network impressively in the last 5 years. And of course, we are happy to offer our service to forwarders and customers in this corridor. So in this map, this is basically our coverage. We have 2 services connecting from the port of Halifax to East Coast South America. The first one is called the ZCX. That after New York, we go to Halifax and then direct to Kingston. It's 6-day transit times. It's very fast service, 100% operated by ZIM. And then from the port of Kingston is our hub, our transshipment. We connect to East Coast South America. So in the Canada side, you see the map with the ramp rails coming from Vancouver up to Montreal that we connect all the way to the port of Halifax. Normally we take from Toronto, Montreal, 3 days to get into the port. And then we go to our hub in Kingston, as mentioned before. And in East Coast South America, we go in the southern part to Itapoa. This is the state of Santa Catarina. There is a tax incentive in that area, in that state. So it's quite important for us. And we are developing more and more that port. We are competing with the port of Navegantes in the same state. But we see that there are construction going on and delays and congestion in the port of Navegantes. So I think we took the right decision to go to Itapoa, and customers are definitely supporting in this service. Then we call the port of Paranaguá. Instead of Paraná, Santos, that's the main port in Brazil, and then Rio de Janeiro. So how we bring value to our customers. So one of the main aspect is that we operate this service by ourselves. They're fully independent. We control the operation. If we have to make ad hoc call for projects, we can take that decision. So we are really open to out-of-gauge cargo. It's a lot to build with Brazil. Brazil is very strong in import and export from the project cargo. And we have the vessel, we have the capability and the space to go into that market, the OG market. Tanks also is another commodity or type of equipment highly used in this corridor. They are ready to support. And again, these are our own operated vessels. And more importantly, in Canada, we have this large connectivity. We have the equipment in Toronto, Montreal for high cube 20-foot containers. And also from Vancouver, we can connect the kind of equipment. The reefers is another of our main capabilities. We have more than 300 plugs on these ships that we can offer for the reefer export from Canada. So you see on the right section of the table is the transit time. Halifax to Santos, as you may know, there is no direct service in the market. So everything is via transshipment, could be in Colombia, Cartagena, and Panama. Our hub is Kingston. We have been operating there for 40 years. It's the largest transshipment or hub port for ZIM. So we have a strong team helping us to expedite all the connectivity. And the transit time is 30 days. It's one of the, I would say, the shortest transit time in the market. We are very keen to monitor that we are offering expedite service and connectivity through our team in Kingston. And the rest of the port of Rio de Janeiro are definitely within the market capabilities and in the top of the rank. There are publications that come in every month with the ranking of the schedule reliability. I put in one of the points to highlight here. And we have been since we started this service to East Coast America in February this year, connecting from Kingston, we have been on the top of the rank, and also having that in September, that's the last publication. So we believe in the schedule reliability. This is how we are trying to differentiate from our customers. Nowadays, there is a lot of disruptions going on with the strike, as you well know. There was in the US, now it's in Canada. The transshipment hub in the Caribbean also are complex. right? It's a lot of services, but we are doing really following up very strictly to try to be within the window so we don't lose our opportunity to call in the different port and we keep the scale reliability. This is how we are trying to differentiate from our customers. And I think our operation team is doing a great job in this service. That's one of the highest scale reliability market. In South America northbound, we offer, of course, all the ports showing the table. Santos, as you may know, is the largest port for the imports and for the export. We have a strong team in South America as well as in Canada. These are SIM-owned offices. And we have, in the case of Brazil, we have a sales team in the south, also, of course, in Santos and in the north, and of course, also in Argentina and Uruguay. And in Canada, our sales team, let's say our headquarters for Canada is in Montreal, but we have sales team in Montreal, in Toronto, Vancouver, and Halifax for the reefer market. So Brazil is important for us. We have seen a growth in volume. I mean, this year definitely about 12% if we compare Q3 2024 versus 2023. We expect the market condition to continue improving. Currently, we are in the peak season for the export from Brazil. I'm seeing a huge participation in that market at the moment to the US, but we expect and we really hope to be able to reach more customers and go into Canada. As mentioned before, we have very strong service, and it's important, I mean, through this channel that more and more potential customers know about ZIM and start using our service. So the last slide is just with the commercial offices as how we are structured in Canada and Brazil. So I will, of course, send the presentation so you can distribute to the different people, but here are our contacts in the different offices in Canada and Brazil. That's all I have, Peter, for today. Thank you very much for the time.
Pablo, thank you so much. You can unshare now. And Pablo, it's so funny to see the respect that ZIM is giving so many places in Brazil. I have spent a lot of time over the last 2 years visiting outside of São Paulo and outside of Rio and looking at Santa Catarina and looking at Rio Grande do Sul and many other very active and aggressive ports. So it's nice to see that you're servicing all of those areas. I do have one last question for you. Products. You've got a big reefer business, but what is primarily the products that you're seeing? And this is a question that everybody's going to get asked eventually.
I mean, for reefers, for Brazil, I mean, from Canada, for is fish, potatoes. These are the main commodities.
Yeah, potatoes.
Right,
Yeah.
that the export, there is crab as well. Not mainly too much to Brazil, but this is what we export from Canada to all the world, right? To the Caribbean, to Far East. These are the main products, and there's seasonality, of course.
Yeah, wonderful.
But
So
we have the plugs, we have the equipment, we have the reefer capability in the ship. That's, I think, is very important for the people in the network to know.
100%. We need to know the options. That's for sure. Pablo, thank you so much. Thank you for the presentation. We appreciate it very much. Now we're going to go to our discussion about movers in the Atlantic region and Brazil and those people who make it possible. So I want to introduce our co-chair, Bernadette Fernandes, who's going to moderate the discussion, as well as our co-chair, Peter Shaw from Port St. John, who will have lots to say. I think he has a presentation lined up. And then Arno Mello, who is president of MELLOHAWK Logistics, who's also the current elected president of CIFA, who is down in Rio right now at a conference. And over to you three. So Bernadette, I guess I will lead off with you.
Sorry, finding the mute button is always the biggest challenge on these calls. So hello, everyone. My name is Bernadette Fernandes. I'm absolutely delighted to be your moderator for today's webinar. I'm the co-chair, as Peter said, of the Atlantic chapter of the Brazil-Canada Chamber of Commerce, along with the illustrious Peter Shaw, who is on the panel today. I'm also the founder and CEO of the Varanda Network, an international trade and investment company. My work is focused on fostering strategic connections and facilitating growth between Atlantic Canada and, in this case, Brazil. Currently, I'm in Portugal, but that does not take away from my passion and my love for Brazil, helping businesses navigate new opportunities in these markets. I'm thrilled to guide our discussion today as we explore the movers and the strategies that make international logistics possible across these regions. I would like to pass the baton to Peter and then Arnaud as well. But Peter, just starting with you, I'd like to ask you to present the Port of St. John. We've heard from Craig. I'd love to have you talk about it, like Pablo has in his bailiwick, and let us know all about the Port of St. John.
Yeah, happy to do that. Thank you, Bernadette, for the intro and passing the mic over to me. Pablo, thank you for sharing your slides as well. They are very interesting. As Craig noted, we are open for business, and part of my role and my team's role is to connect in with the different shipping lines and make sure the relationships are strong and sound. And when there's questions or concerns or positive feedback too with our terminal or anything to do with St. John, we like to get our hands dirty and involved and help out where we can, and obviously enjoy the positive feedback too. I'll take just a few minutes. We did have a webinar last week as well where I was the moderator, but I would like to just boast, I guess, quickly on Port St. John. I got to make sure I get the right slide up here. One moment. Hold on. There we go. So there's my welcome slide. I hope everyone can see that okay. But yes, we are Port St. John. We're one of Canada's 17 port authorities. There's really like 5 major container ports, I suppose, with the West Coast, and then Halifax and St. John on the East Coast, and then of course Montreal, which is more central. There are container moves that are happening outside of those big ports, but we are a part of the larger international trade infrastructure as far as Canada is concerned. I'd like to just go to slide number 2. Really demonstrates, because you heard Craig say it, we still have to fight tooth and nail for all of the containers that are coming in. When you think of Canada, a lot of the times you do think of Montreal and Vancouver as those big 2 ports. So St. John needs to build that awareness, as well as continue to provide excellent white glove service, which we have been doing for quite a while, and that's why we're seeing the growth that we have been experiencing. So this just gives you an example as to where we are in the global scale. As I zoom in on these maps a little bit closer and closer, you'll understand what our value proposition is. But St. John really has gotten on the map largely because of our geographic location. So being only an 8-hour drive north of Boston, 10 hours north of New York, and within a day's drive of both Montreal and Toronto, that the same is said for rail. We can access a huge population density. So we're right there, right in the thick of things, basically on the US and Canada border. We border with Maine, the state of Maine, and we border with the province of Quebec as well. So we are situated very closely to those large markets. And one of our taglines is we're bringing kind of those larger markets of Toronto, Montreal, the Midwest, closer to the customers, closer to the coast. So that's the idea there. To give you an idea, just an idea of the infrastructure here in St. John, there's been a lot that's changed since this photo. We just haven't gotten it because we're getting near fall and winter season, but this gives you an idea. Craig had mentioned that we've got cranes 5 and 6 coming. They'll be located in between the 2 sets of cranes that you see now, so sort of the back end or the stern end of the vessel that's in place there. But just to highlight some of the things that we've done, we've actually added approximately 20 acres of land. As you can see, some of that is currently in construction mode in this photo, but we have added that laydown space as one of the things. We've added the additional pier, we've added the additional cranes, and ultimately it makes it a very efficient terminal where it goes cranes all the way back through the terminal. And you can see the 6,000 feet of intermodal rail. Craig did emphasize it in his welcome how important rail is for Canada. And I'll just reiterate that the vastness of our country requires efficient and green movement of your cargo, and rail really is the way to do that. The interesting piece is we have 6,000 feet there, but we also have 3,000 feet right on terminal as well. So a total of, it ends up being closer to 10,000 feet when you add it all up, start to finish, but ultimately there's some rail right on property there. So we're able to really take your cargo off the ship, put it on dock, move it to the rail, and then send it on its way very, very efficiently at our terminal.
Peter,
Peter, can I interrupt for a moment?
Yeah, we can't
Sorry.
see, the slides did not advance.
Oh, they didn't. Oh, okay. Which slide are you on?
The welcome slide, this the frequency, vessel fleet, ports of call, duration.
Okay,
I-
well, that's unfortunate. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I only see the map of Brazil, so yeah.
Yeah. You want to
Okay,
do a little refresh?
I will do a little refresh. Can stop share. Let's try that.
Sure.
There, guys.
Bernadette, was that what you were going to say?
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, okie dokie.
Are we seeing the map of, or not the map, but the outline of the terminal
Yes.
now?
No, now we
Okay.
see the terminal with the cruise ships.
That's perfect. That's kind of what I'm highlighting everything off of. So, this is what our terminal looks like now that everyone can see it. So all of those things still apply, but I guess the last piece that I did want to talk about is that we do have warehouses on port property that are 100,000 square feet each. All of them kind of with the opportunity to do some transload cross-docking type of work. So DP World would be the company, as Craig mentioned, that manages that. And happy to connect any interested people in that field. That's kind of where I fit in, is that I do a lot of the promotion on mass, and then when you have questions, I will take it and direct it to the right person. So that's a little bit of where I fit in. I'm going to try and change the slide to the next one here. Hopefully it goes. And no, it doesn't. I'm not sure why. How about that? Can you see?
No,
this?
go out and there it is. It switched.
Okay, so very similar to Pablo's slides, CMA CGM is the company that calls into St. John at this time, and you'll see a lot of similarities between the two. From our, I guess, supply chain line, it goes St. John right to New York, and then also uses Kingston, Jamaica, and from there they have two services in the CMA world that are called BrazX 1 and BrazX 2, and that is the connector from Jamaica that will take it down into the Jamaican countries. Very similar port opportunities, I guess, to what Pablo had shared. So I won't go into that too long, but the transit times are very similar. I had a look on the website today just to confirm, but we've always said somewhere in the range of 25 to 35 days. And I believe when I checked, it was 28 to 33 days that CMA was promoting on their website. So definitely a strong service that has been going at our port since 2018 and has gotten a lot of really excellent feedback. But I think I guess a big piece that I'd like to mention here is the whole St. John supply chain. So it's important to note really where St. John comes into play and how we're different than maybe Halifax, or how we're different than Montreal, or even some of the US East Coast ports, is that we do connect into three Class 1 railways. So CSX is an American-based Class 1, and you can see the darker blue line that goes down through the southern, or I guess the eastern coast of the United States, like Portland, Boston, New York. So that is an option for shippers, especially in a time that we just passed through where there were strikes on the East Coast. You could have used St. John and our supply chain down into the United States, or from the United States through St. John elsewhere. So that is an option for anybody thinking about diversifying their supply chain going forward. The red, or I guess I'll go with the teal or the light blue, which would be Canadian National or CN. They do call St. John, and they did a lot of the cargo here for a lot of our growth years. But as Craig alluded, in 2020 into 2021, CPKC bought back the rail line that you can see through the state of Maine, and that really was a game changer as far as our cargo and our North American reach. So just to compare the two, CN and CP, both excellent opportunities. CN kind of stays in Canada, as you can see, and goes up above the state of Maine, where CPKC has that mileage advantage right through the state of Maine and has Brownville Junction as a major crossover. So that's an important piece to the St. John story, and that's all of the slides that I have here because I really just wanted to, I guess, give a intro. So that's where I'll stop for now, and maybe there'll be questions at the end.
Yeah, thank you so much, Peter. I recognize that there probably will be a lot of questions because of interest, not because of lack of clarity. But I want to give Arno some time to tell us about MELLOHAWK and MELLOHAWK Logistics, which is what we're here to talk about today. And over to you, Arno.
Hi, Bernadette. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity of being here with Peter and you and everybody in this call. MELLOHAWK is an international shipping company. We are a freight forwarding company. So we ship cargo by air, ocean, and we do trucking across North America, customs clearance, distribution, and warehousing. And I am Brazilian, so Brazil is a niche market for MELLOHAWK Logistics. With our offices in Canada, Miami, and Los Angeles, we basically service the whole South America. And we do a lot in Brazil. We do a lot of guiding Canadian companies how to penetrate in Brazil and kind of navigate them through the complex, detailed custom system in Brazil to clear customs and distribute product. And so there's a lot to talk about that in this call.
Thank you so much, Arno. I do have a question, and I'm sure we're going to open up for questions. Actually, we are open for questions now. So if anyone has any questions, please submit them into the Q&A. We're going to try to get through as many of those questions, burning questions from you before the end of this call. But for now, I wanted to ask questions, and I think, Pablo, you had started to answer it for Peter Hawkins, but I really want to know about the products. Like, what are the products that you see going to Brazil from Atlantic Canada, from Canada, and vice versa? So maybe Pablo, if you could kick it off, if you're there, and if not, we can move over to Arno, to Peter. Yeah. Oh, there's Pablo.
Yes, mainly on the reefer segment. These are the kind of the potatoes, the fish, dry fish. We, of course, we are exploring more opportunities. We would like to see more kind of FAK cargo, right, going to Brazil. And on the import side is contraction from Brazil to Canada. These are the main commodities, but I think there is room to grow. The services are there. And I think it's a great opportunity in this forum so that people understand a bit better the logistics, the connectivity, and kind of start doing more and more business between the two countries. I think the opportunities are there.
That's great, Pablo. So if we're talking about potatoes, for example, going to Brazil, like how long does that take? How should they be packed? What is the outcome on the other side? How well do they sell? And any tips around products like potatoes?
I mean, on the technical side, we offer the reefer containers, right? Our customer normally in Halifax area, this is where the potatoes are, right? They pull the container from the terminal, they load the container at a certain temperature and then return to the terminal, like in Halifax, in this case, will be St. John as well. And we monitor the temperature. We have a special equipment with SIM monitor that we see daily how the temperature is within the parameter specified by the customer. And we try to keep that temperature the whole voyage. If anything happens, we have an alert on the chips, and you have technician going and seeing what's going on with the product to make sure that the temperature keeps through the whole voyage, and we avoid any problem with the product that can bring in damage. So the thing for the shipping line, and I'm talking about ZIM, we really care about the reefer product, and we monitor the equipment through the whole voyage. When I arrive to destination, the Brazilian port, of course, we allow to unload the cargo, we plug it to the terminal if needed until the consignee go to the port and retrieve the containers. And then it's probably Arnold can give us more explanation how to work on that end, because this is the customer or the receiver's part.
That's great. Thank you, Pablo. And while I have you, I would like to ask a question from the audience that has come in. And that is there any service from Brazil to Vancouver Port? And if so, what are the routes?
In our case, yes, we can offer service from Brazil to Vancouver. Our route is coming from, all the ports that we mentioned before, Santos, Rio de Janeiro, Paraná, Itapoa, going to Kingston. And from Kingston, we connect to Halifax. And from Halifax, we have all the rail connectivity to the whole country, right up to Vancouver, with all the ramps in between Saskatoon, Regina, Winnipeg, Edmonton, Calgary, and finally Vancouver.
Yeah, and I'll just double down on that. It's a very similar outcome for here in St. John as well. We offload the cargo in here, and either through CP or CN, you can go directly through all of the ramps, as Pablo had mentioned, across the West Coast. We are seeing actually an increase of cargo going through Vancouver. So once upon a time, people probably thought, oh well, I may as well just take a ship directly through, maybe from Brazil through the Panama Canal and up the West Coast. But it's becoming more and more a viable option through the excellent rail connections that we do here have in Atlantic Canada. So happy to boast that as well on our end.
Thank you
wanna-
so much, Peter. Yeah, go
Bernadette,
ahead.
if I can add, we're talking ocean here, which is great, a great explanation from Pablo and Peter. But you got to remember that we do quite a bit of air freight to Brazil. There's a lot of commodities that fly to Brazil on a daily basis, and they are chemical reagents, they are bacteria for research. There is mining equipment and drones. Canada sells great technology to Brazil, and it's sensitive technology that sometimes cannot travel on a container. So air freight is also very used to ship high volume of products to Brazil, mainly entering through the São Paulo state. But of course, in ocean, you do larger quantities and you do commodities. So, and we see as well importing on the ocean side. We do a lot of green coffee, a lot of food items from Brazil, a lot of steel and alloy, and a lot of raw materials coming to Canada, and then they go out again as finished products back to the Brazilian consumer. So let's not forget 200+ million consumers in Brazil. It's a great market, desperate for business. So, gotta look at that as well.
I
Thank you
think
so
it's
much.
important to note too that, the potatoes are kind of the front and center commodity, especially this time of year. Having huge producers here in the Atlantic Canada region, directly with Cavendish and McCain's as two very, very large companies that do that. But fertilizer products from Atlantic Canada, peat moss, potash, things like that are really, really big commodities that there's a really huge need for as far as export goes from our region. Pablo mentioned the frozen seafood as well, which I think is an important one to highlight. But as I did a quick search on my end too, a lot of that machinery, a lot of that type of stuff that Arnon was connecting with, and I think a lot of it is for that mining industry that goes to and fro.
And I recommend everybody visiting the port at St. John and taking a tour of the port, right? The potash terminal, which was absolutely stunning. It was great, Peter hosting Port St. John days, and it was amazing. My first time in St. John, it was fascinating. So anyway, visit St. John.
Yeah, the tourist industry is going to appreciate you for that as well, Arnon.
I'm gonna jump in there too, because on that potash tour, it was like going into Jurassic Park with a big door going up and then going in and seeing what they're doing. Holy cow, incredibly impressive. If you ever get a chance to go and see that facility, it's great. One thing I do want to add too, I had some conversations with a bunch of politicians who were acting on behalf of farmers and fishers in the Maritimes. Blueberries, crab, they're all looking for markets. Maple syrup, they're all looking for markets. So if and Brazil is a hot market for all of this stuff and should be introduced to it if you have any interest, because Peter, Pablo, and Arno can certainly get it out of there. We just need to find buyers for it.
That's a good point. Cranberries is a growing commodity as well.
Cranberries, yeah.
Growing commodity, but yeah.
So you've all seen Peter Shaw's ability to be funny and smart. So Peter, just while I have you, with the recent growth in the Port of St. John that Craig, had alluded to earlier, like what infrastructure improvements or future developments, in addition to the cranes, that can we expect to support that growth?
Yeah, actually, well, we talked about rail being a huge component, and the rail, which you saw in my photo in the slide, that is a sufficient amount of space to do approximately 12,000 feet of rail a day, which is when you're nearing kind of the 500 to 600,000 TEUs, or if people don't understand what TEU means, that basically just means a container. So when we talk about TEUs, if we say we're moving 200,000 containers or TEUs in a year, that's kind of what it interchanges to. Not perfectly, but pretty close. So the rail was a huge component to our growth, and CPKC buying back the railway that they used to own into St. John back when we were one of Canada's thriving largest ports. That was quite a while ago, but they're back now, and we're seeing that growth. But I think kind of the unsung hero in all of it is you do need space. So if you think about it, container stacking and all the things, it is very efficient the way that they do that. But you need to have the space in order to stack it, and it needs to be in a state of, I guess, quality to actually hold usually 3, 4, 5 containers high. So we've added, like I mentioned, close to 20 acres of space, which really takes us from when that's all complete, which we're not 100% there yet, but pretty close. When all of that is complete, we are going to go from a capacity or an ability to handle 300,000 containers in a year, which is 300, 350 is where we are right now. And when that's done, we're going to be looking at 800,000 containers to 1 million containers in a given year. So really adding that ability to hold the cargo is really going to help, and then the other things that come around it. So when you have more and more cargo that comes through, you get more and more Arnons and MELLOHAWKs of the world that see that and maybe start up a warehousing company or a cross-docking opportunity or an interchange of some kind where they can bring value-added capabilities to your cargo. Arnon, when are you going to come to St. John with your business?
Oh my God. Okay, let's talk after this call.
I kind of threw you under the bus there. Sorry.
No worries. More the better. More the
Yeah.
better.
Yeah, the port days are so successful, and the facilities are so amazing, and we're all very, very proud of Port St. John. And going back to the vibrancy that existed there back in the day, and then overlaying on top of that, keeping it on top of all the new trends. It's been a very exciting time for us. So the questions are starting to come in now, and I just want to talk to you while I have you. All three of you can answer, of course, but what about oversized cargo? What do we do with the out of gauge or the OLG cargo that cannot be loaded in the shipping containers due to its size?
And
Well,
especially the question was specific about from BC, BC to the port to so that crossing the country.
Sure. So Pablo, can you go ahead and answer that question? It was a follow-up question to the original question around Vancouver.
Okay, so there are OG capabilities on the rail, but there are, of course, certain restrictions, right? You cannot go to certain dimension or wide or height compared that what you do port to port. Port to port, we have basically no limitation. You can put breakable cargo directly on the ship without using flat rack or special equipment. But in the case of the ramp, there are limitations that we can, of course, send you the information exactly how the rail can take the maximum. So there are limitations, unfortunately, but from Port of Halifax or Port of, St. John, we can take any kind of cargo directly onto the ships.
Also, I want to add that that is also called project cargo, and something is very large, is not containerized. It's a very specific quote. So a freight forwarder will ask technical drawings of the piece if they're very large, very detailed, where they're going to be strapped and quoted. So you cannot just simply say an email saying, oh, I have something that is this ton and this big. No, it's very, very detailed information in order to find you the best route with the best carrier. Not everyone can take the same piece, but as Pablo said, large pieces are placed on the top of the ship and strapped there, basically, and then that's how it goes. And Peter can fill in the details of how that's done, I'm sure.
Well, that's right. And I'm the one talking to the freight forwarders a lot of the times when they say, okay, I've got these dimensions, here's some specs, here's the picture, here's all the things. So all the things that Arnon has talked about, and it'll come to me or maybe directly to the terminal operator, in our instance, DP World. And ultimately I'll make the connection if they don't have a contact with DP World. But what they'll do is they'll say, okay, based on size, height, weight, equipment available, yes, we can do that. However, you may need to use a truck because over the road has higher restriction numbers than over the rail or something like that. It is a case by case basis almost all the time. But generally speaking, yes, St. John can handle that. And then as long as it meets the restrictions out to, say, BC, then it wouldn't be a problem.
Thank you both, or thank you all three. So we have a question, I'm not sure specifically, but it's for you, Arnaud. And what is needed to import into Brazil?
That's a great question. I was plugging that in at some point in this call because that's very crucial to any Canadian companies exporting. First question that people should ask when selling something to Brazil is ask your buyer, are you allowed to import this product into the country? Are you allowed to clear into Brazil? Because not every company is allowed to import in Brazil. There is special permissions required, special registration, and third parties or federal government license that is needed by for certain products. So first question is, do you have a radar? RADAR, that's the symbol for a permission to import. And then and again, Brazil, as a lot of people heard, has a high taxation system on import products, but it's not only based on Canadian products, it's based in worldwide products. So I'm in Brazil right now attending a customs conference with an association for the Americas. And Brazil is a very advanced clearance system. So there is no corruption in Brazil when it comes to customs. I like to point that out, that things are black and white. You follow the rules or you don't follow the rules at all, because your shipment will not be boarded. And customs was presenting here saying that they know even before it leaves to any country coming to Brazil, they know all the parties involved. They know all the banking transactions is all connected. So you need to always work with people that understand the market. Make sure you ask the right questions to your buyer so they understand how Brazil works. Because as I said, some companies don't have a clue here. And here, I mean Brazil, so I'm saying here. But it's a very sophisticated system and huge potential for Canadian companies.
That's great, Arnaud. And I just want to ask the reverse of that. I have a question that just came in, so bear with me, please. So that was about importing into Brazil. We have a question I'm Brazilian and I own a beauty salon in Moncton, New Brunswick. Very interested in importing Brazilian beauty products, and we all know they're very beautiful in Brazil, such as Brazilian keratin, air purifiers for keratin treatments, etc. Looking to understand more about the options I have and how strict it is to bring such products into Canada.
Great question. I am going to start right away. First of all, you need to ask your Brazilian supplier, are they allowed to export? Now on the reverse, Brazilian companies also need the permission to remove product from Brazil on an export process. First question, can you export? Second question, in Canada, you need to have a business. And now more than ever on October 21st, there is a new import system into Canada called CARM, C-A-R-M. And all companies now must be registered with the CBSA in order to import. Besides being registered with the CBSA and having an account, you also need, for these products, you need a Health Canada license registration. So your company will go, MELLOHAWK, I can give you the link, email me, arnon@mellowhawk.com, and I'll send you the information how to import beauty products, which are imported quite a bit from Brazil into Canada, but you need to declare them to Health Canada to make sure that there's no harm chemicals on these products for the Canadian consumer. And very easy to import if they have no hard chemicals in it. That's why Health Canada wants to know the content of these ingredients. But most of Brazilian companies, they are very advanced on this line of products. So I think you're not going to have any problems, and we can quote the whole process for you for sure.
Thank you so much, Arno. And I can put you in contact with the person that asked the question. In fact, I just happen to know her. So I want to ask Peter, what about Brazil's profile from your perspective? Is it growing here in New Brunswick? Like, is there growing interest in Brazil? And both ways, like to import, export, like what is happening around our own perception of what Brazil is and what their demands are, their needs are, or their just their wants.
Yeah. That's a great question too, and any of my colleagues feel free to jump in from your perspective as well. But what I'll say is that as we grew as a port authority, we had one global operator in MSC, and then when CMA, CGM came along, that did open a very nice corridor into the Caribbean, Central, and South America, which included Brazil. And quite understandably, Brazil is probably the largest economy that's in, I guess, south of the equator. So they really have been a huge trade partner for us for a long time. I would say from a trending perspective, I haven't looked at it directly this year or anything like that, but we were seeing it go up, and then obviously the pandemic did create kind of some skewed statistics, and there was a couple of down years, I would say, and I can really only speak for, say, our statistics, our Atlantic Canadian view on things, but I believe it's starting to creep back up now that those things are starting to happen again, and the congestion and the difficulty and the backup of storage in certain warehouses and things like that is starting to equalize out. So in the grand scheme of things, to answer the question, I would say Brazil continues to be one of Port St. John's main partners. So we actually have DP World here in St. John. We have DP World in Caucedo, Dominican Republic, which is one of the stops along the way and a very large transshipment hub in the Caribbean. And then we also have DP World, not we, but DP World is also present in Santos. So there is a huge connection between our two countries. We do connect into many of the ports that Pablo had shared with us, but obviously when you have one terminal operator and one logistics provider in DP World doing Santos into Dominican Republic and then up into St. John, that creates a bit of a value chain that way. So I would say that Brazil will continue to be a huge focus for us.
Thank you so much, Peter. That's very encouraging, and I'm sure Andrea knows now that she can go right to the port for her products. I have a question for Arnaud about hiring survey companies for OOG, and I'm kind of keep going back to the OOG cargo, but what is that process, if you will, Arnaud, or anybody else that wants to chime in?
Well, I guess Peter can help me on that, but there's several survey companies that you can contact to do that survey. I mean, certainly, I don't know if Port St. John has the service by itself, or you recommend hiring somebody that you deal with. But I don't know, Peter.
Yeah, typically how it works is I would direct a DP World and they would have certain partners or contractors in place. I believe they use one most of the time, one company with many different surveyors that will come in, and it's kind of that trusted, because you have to keep in mind anything that's going to be on a port has to go through certain, you know, checks and security and that sort of thing. So in order to have partners, you have to also have them go through those security functions as well. So they usually have a certain group of people that they'll work closely with and that do an accurate and good job. And so they'll get those specs and share it with DP World, and then there's that yay or nay conversation from there.
I was
Great.
going to say, you always go back to the place where, or the line or the port that is doing. So guys, who do you work with? Who has the permission already with you that we can partner with, instead of finding somebody out of the whole equation that has no permission, right, to do an on-site survey. So that's why, yeah, I agree with you.
Thank you very much. I had a question around for all of you, and I'm just very cognizant of time. So I'm going to say that it'll be the final question. But if in the meantime, if I get another burning question, I will. Oh, actually, I do have another one that we haven't talked about yet. So, a friend of mine owns Açaí Rude and is located in São Paulo and is looking to export from Brazil to Canada, where I would be the importer. Are you able to share our contact information? Or maybe the question may be, or the asker may be asking me to share the contact information, but if you know the answer to that question, Arnaud, please go ahead and ask and answer.
Yeah, so a good question. Very important about food into Canada. First of all, you need to get a CFIA license. Any Canadian business needs to apply, pay, and obtain a license, Canadian Food Inspection Agency. Very regulated since 2019, the importation of food into Canada. Even if it's food to be processed into another final product, you need that license. And that license is taking actually several weeks to come through now, CFIA, so you need time. So first get the license, then we can start on the quote of the bringing the açaí, which we do either via container in a large quantity. MELLOHAWK also had and still has a now LCL consolidated frozen shipment from São Paulo Santos to Canada for frozen products minus 18 degrees. So we definitely can help you on that. And also air freight, we do a lot for frozen with Air Canada from Guarulhos to here. Even though Guarulhos Airport, big messy right now with congestion, the airport is shut down for cargo. So hopefully, we were told yesterday that in a couple of another week, things should go back to normal. But it's pretty congested at the moment here in Brazil. But we can help you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Arnaud. We're running out of time, so I'm going to leave my question, which is also a very good question. I'm going to ask two other questions very quickly, if I may. Natalie Bradbury with the Ottawa chapter of the Organization of Women in International Trade. Do steel consumer products imported into Brazil face tariffs or other difficulties?
Sorry, I missed the beginning of the question.
It's Natalie from OWIT is asking if steel consumer products have tariffs based on steel, and the answer is yes. Steel generally is a huge complicated process between Canada and Brazil. If this product is something less and say it's a coffee maker that happens to have steel components, that's a different conversation. But if this is something that is just refabricated steel somehow, then there's absolutely tariffs, difficulties. It's quite a complicated thing to do, and there are quotas involved in both cases. Also, we have one other question about Forex from Antonio. Arnaud, I'll let you take that in just a second. Antonio, everybody's looking for the best ways to get money moved out of Brazil. That's still a very difficult thing. It's something that they're working on. And there are many different companies that are members of the BCCC that we'd be happy to refer you to for that conversation. Arno?
Talking about tariffs, there is no trade agreement between Canada and Brazil, okay? So don't waste your time doing a certificate of origin for any transaction between Brazil and Canada, because that certificate of origin goes nowhere. You're wasting time and money. So high tariffs in Brazil, yes. Tariffs in Brazil are based on value of goods, freight, insurance, and then 5 taxes on top of that, which are compounded. That is not only for Canada, it's for worldwide. So that's how Brazil works. And people still continue to import, business continue to happen. So just you need to partner with someone in Brazil on the ground that can guide you on that. I have 2 other comments that I'm going to take now, Bernadette, before you pass on the baton. First comment is to Pablo and to Zim. I want to express my thanks to Zim. On May and June this year, MELLOHAWK ran a campaign across Canada to raise 80,000 kilos of winter clothes for the victims of the flood in Rio Grande do Sul. So the Brazilian community came together, and we were the organizers with the Consid in Toronto, and Zim was a great supporter. I want to say thanks to Zim and to Viviane Rodrigues, I believe your country manager,
Absolutely.
who helped me in Brazil and exempted our local taxes of Zim in Brazil, so we could move the containers locally on arrival. So thank you so much for your partnership with us. The containers got there really fast. We were impressed, and we have very emotional videos. If somebody wants to see that, considontario.org. That's my whole report is there. So thank you. And the second comment is to Peter Shaw and the Port of St. John, which are great partners, have been great partners with MELLOHAWK in many instances of, detailing import processes with Canada Customs and filing documents. So Peter, thank you for the partnership and support always. Those are my final remarks.
Thank you, Arnaud.
Thank you.
That's
Thank
where
you,
we
everyone.
really like to fit in, is to be that port partner, or the partner port, I guess you could look at it. So we do our very best. We're very reachable. Reach out to us if you have these questions that pop up along the way. Myself and my director, Shannon Blanchard, are both here to help you. And we've got all the contacts. So we're an easy one-stop shop.
Thank you very much, Peter. I know I was so delighted to hear you start to answer or to make those final comments, because I was just so overwhelmed by the generosity of the companies that were involved, particularly you and your time. I know was just a remarkable community spirit. So thank you for that. We are out of time. However, we are okay to stay on the call to answer any questions that you may have. In the meantime, I will be asking a final question from my own perspective, and it's about the future. What does the future hold? Looking forward, where do each of you see the greatest opportunities for growth in logistics between our regions, Atlantic Canada and Brazil? And if you had to highlight, one priority to strengthen the Atlantic Brazil logistics corridor, what would that be? So tell me everything you want to tell me about your vision and where you see us going. Pablo, I'll start with you because
Yes.
you haven't said anything for a couple of minutes.
Yes, thank you for the introduction, the question. So definitely we see opportunity to grow in Brazil. Mentioned before, SIM in the last years have been growing quite a bit, bringing new services, bringing more capacity in this corridor, and overall bringing a very reliable service. Nowadays, I think this is one of the key factors in the industry, because all the disruption in the supply chain. Since in the COVID, I would say the supply chain has not been fully recovered. And we are working, and that's for ZIM, definitely the first priority. And the fact that we have independent services from Canada to the transshipment port in Kingston, and then connecting from Kingston southbound, is giving us all the tools and the decision-making process internally in ZIM to go to the next level. And Again, this service we just started in February has been very successful because of the scale reliability. And we want to extend, of course, all the potential partners in Brazil and for in Canada to try to approach our sales team. I mean, you have all the information there. We're happy to help. I mean, with the OG, again, we have the capability to take all this cargo. And I think that's one of the segments we, as a company, we're trying to grow. And from Brazil, it's really a good opportunity because we see this cargo in and out, both ways. And we are ready to start doing more business. And we just need the help from our partners in Brazil and Canada.
Thank you, Pablo. Peter, Arno?
Yeah, I can speak quickly. I mean, selfishly, I think as we continue to improve our infrastructure and grow kind of that global realization and awareness, I think that St. John will become a very, and already is, but it become a very sought after supply chain for Brazil. It's an interesting kind of fun fact for anybody that's generally aware of the geography between Canada and Brazil, but I believe the distance between St. John and Santos is the same as Brazil, or sorry, not Brazil, St. John to Baltimore. So if you look at that on a map, you'd call me crazy. But due to the curvature of the Earth, we do have very strong supply chain lines to the country. And I think we can just continue to capitalize that because clearly we are not tapped into the massive economy that is in Brazil. Not all the way. I haven't seen it all to its fullest yet. So that's where I'll leave that.
Thank you, Peter. Arno?
Okay, for me, well, technology for sure. The theme of the conference that I'm attending here in Rio is green customs and technology. So I heard from Brazilian customs several incentives that are in the pipeline together with the WCO, World Customs Organization, which is also present here, full force, 1,500 attendees from around the world, talking about sustainability in supply chain as well. And what the federal director of customs in Brazil told me yesterday is that Brazil is thinking perhaps of introducing a classification that if your product is going to benefit sustainability or the environment, that product will have a lower duty when imported here on the chain. And so I thought it was a great idea to have that definition from beginning so the exporter can think about the product and the importer will benefit, or both of them will benefit somehow. Also, Brazil has developed a huge system of recycling or quote unquote destroying confiscated goods, which are turned into fertilizer or jelly, or you know what I mean, if it's wine or cigarettes that are contrabands. Fascinating what they're trying to do here to imagine like millions of tons of product that sometimes enter the country not the correct way and then have to be disposed and is just going to waste, is reprocessed. So whole presentation on that, it was fascinating. I think sustainability is a way to go. So think about that.
I agree. Thank you so much. Such an important point on sustainability as a priority to everything that we do in life. I just wanted to address technology before I hand it over to Peter Hawkins to close the webinar for us around technology especially. And I'm seeing a lot of tracking and automation technology startups and all kinds of applications that are improving the efficiency. And I think that we can really look forward to seeing this Atlantic-Brazil trade corridor advance because of that. I'm currently at Web Summit in Lisbon, Portugal. There are 70,000 people here at last count. There might be more tomorrow. This was the first day, and it's fascinating to see. We have 500 startups from Brazil alone. And that is such an impressive number. There is so much going on with Brazil and the rest of the world that we are in a perfect position to leverage that from Atlantic Canada. So let's do everything we can to increase the technology, the apps, the products, to make us, to strengthen our corridor between Atlantic Canada and Brazil. Over to you, Peter. But before, I just want to thank for my own personal heart to all of you for your amazing insights and sharing those with the world. Over to you, Peter.
Bernadette, thank you so much, and thank you for stepping in today, especially when you're so far away and covering, wearing many hats today. But thank you very much. And that last insight, I think, is something we should all remember: is Brazil is ready, and we should be ready too. And that's what I think we come away with here. Something else too. My takeaways are: talk to the professionals. Full stop. So if you want to ship somewhere, you want to export somewhere, talk to a freight forwarder, talk to the shipping line, talk to a freight forwarder to talk to the shipping line on your behalf. You have experts right here in Pablo Sepulveda and Arno Mello and Peter Shaw, who all can answer your questions, and of course they want your business, so they're going to make sure that it gets delivered. So thank you all, gentlemen. I'm very grateful for your participation, and so on the behalf of the BCCC, I do want to thank our guests, sponsors, partners, members, and the audience for this event, which is recorded and will be available on our website alongside the first webinar on the whole region's export potential. BCCC is continually working to promote connections between Brazil and Canada, so make sure you follow us online about our upcoming initiatives. And of course, we are always looking for members, and we're always looking for sponsors. So happy to talk to you about those opportunities to be part of our network. Thank you for joining us today, and count on the BCCC to expand your network from Brazil to Canada. Thank you all very much. All the best. I hope you have a great afternoon.